to give us a function like that of a normal limb.
Okay, so it can replace a joint, it can replace something that is attached to a joint, and it can replace the whole leg, and then can replace the whole body. Okay, so orthotics is something that straightens and corrects you, but basically it is a very big, huge subject. So we will try to see if we can touch some of it. So hopefully we'll touch lower limb, which is the common stuff, some upper limb, and maybe some spine here. Okay, there you go. So this is the start of a slide. Okay, you need to know that every orthotic will have this component. You will have two joints. If you are connecting a joint to the leg or a joint to the joint above, you will have an ankle and foot orthosis, a part of it. You will have a shank. Shank is the body of the whole implant that you have. You need to identify what is a shank. Then you have another joint. You have a socket from which you have an amputation that will go into, or a not a socket when you have to have an external addition to what you're doing. And then you have a suspension which is attached to, if you are missing a joint, above the joint, especially in amputations, to allow you to function. So remember, every orthotics will have a shank, socket, and suspension. Okay, and the easy way to remember is the shank connects to joints or parts of joints. Socket is where in an amputation it will be a receptacle for the limb that goes in, and the suspension is what attaches it to the body. Okay, and this is what's happening in Europe. I'm sure this will come to Pakistan too. You can have an amputation and you have an orthosis which can allow you to surf, bicycle, climb mountains, even do opera, okay, and ballet. So it is getting very advanced, but we don't want to get into advancement. We just want to go into the basics of it, okay? So can anybody tell me what is the function of an orthotics then? Go on, guys. What's the function? What does it do?
The main function of the orthotics has to replace the joint or limb that has been lost or that has been defunctioned.
Okay. But you can also use it as an augment or straighten something or give power to something that is weak. That is also an orthotics, isn't it? Like, yeah?
Yes, sir.
So it prevents deformity. So if you have a club feet or something like that, you put in a plaster like an orthotic, and that plaster will correct it gradually as you put them. Do you know how an orthotic works in club feet?
No, sir, I don't know, sir.
Go back to your basics. What is creep? Do you know what creep is? So nobody knows what creep is.
Substitution of a bone with another substance.
No, God, no. Do you remember when you have cement? Okay, cement has
Right,
creep.
sir.
What does that mean?
Means substitution of normal bone.
No, it's not substitution. It's a biomechanical problem. So how can you be becoming a substitute? If you put sustained pressure on something, right?
Right, sir.
If you put a sustained pressure on something, it will give way. That's called creep, isn't it? So like if you have a cement and it's not set yet, if you throw it, it will be like a ball and bounce back again, because if you press something hard enough, it will give way. That's called creep. And that's how orthotics work in club feet, where you put a consistent pressure on something for a long time, and it changes shape by giving way to take take the shape of the plaster you put in. Like, okay, so creep is very important in biomechanics of all your joints. Okay, so it prevents deformity. That's the first thing it does. It assists a weak limb. So if you have got a weak limb, are you missing muscles or your nerves are not there, you can add on an orthotics to it to let the person walk or do something with his upper limb. It also is used to align the joints, okay? And it, again, if it's a weak joint, it will help you work a weak joint by adding an orthotics to it, supporting it. Allows person to be independent, and it facilitate motion. So if the exam asks you what are the function of the orthotics, the simple ones you must remember is it prevents deformity, it helps weak limbs, it aligns the joint, It also allows maximum independence, and it facilitates motion. Okay, so these are the things you have to remember if somebody asks you about orthotics. And if you are going to provide orthotics, the first thing that comes to your mind is that, is it efficient? Is it cost effective? Does it look bad? Is cosmesis good or not? And whether you have a temporary or a permanent orthosis, and whether it's dynamic or static, and will it encourage normal movement? So remember, cost comes into it. Efficiency. How does orthotics work with efficiency? Does anybody know? What is the efficiency that we're talking here? Energy efficiency? Gosh, guys, you need to be more interactive. So how do you make? So when I tell you that an above knee amputation is less efficient than a below knee amputation, what does that mean?
The power consumption, energy consumption is more in above knee amputations.
Yes, because you see, when you have an ankle joint that's not working, you're only working to get one joint efficient, right? If now you have an above knee amputation, then you have to have the ankle and the knee both joint working. For that, the energy required to do the muscle work for knee stabilization and ankle stabilization is a lot more inefficient. Therefore, if you have an above knee amputation, it becomes less energy efficient. Okay, so when you're considering orthotics, you need to know that it's cheap and effective, it's efficient, it looks acceptable. You know, if you put something too bulky on a patient, most girls won't wear it. Okay, especially if you're going to have to do something with weak ankles and people with polio, people with joint replacement that have gone weak. So it's going to be cheap. It needs to be efficient. It needs to look good. Okay. Sorry, my telephone is coming. It shouldn't be. Okay. So the other thing to understand, is that, is it static or is it dynamic? So if you have an orthotic, you need to know whether you put in a system where it just stabilizes your joint or it gives you function also. Okay. So remember again, efficiency, cost, cosmesis, temporary versus permanent. Is it dynamic or is it static? Yeah. And if you are doing it, you must remember that doning and doping of orthosis is important. Now, what does that mean? Doning and doping of orthosis. What does that mean? So these are terminology you're going to be asking in the exam, so you should know. So what's a doning and doping of orthosis? Does anybody know? Sorry. Let me put this on silent. Yeah, go on. So tell me, what does doning and doping of orthosis means?
Can I make a guess?
Yes, of course.
Wearing it and wearing
Absolutely.
it off.
Doning is called wearing it. So you must make an orthosis that is easy to put on. Okay? And the orthosis must be easy to take off. So if it takes so much energy to put it on and so much energy to take it off, nobody's going to wear it. Okay? So you must know that it fits properly. You must also know that you can take it on and put it on easily. Unfortunately, this is a terminology that's going to be used with orthosis, but it actually means putting it on and taking it off. Okay? And you must also make sure that the patient wears it when he's walking in or when he's using it. Otherwise, it's no good. Okay? So what would you do if you are doing a patient or you want to amputate a patient? What's the first thing you're going to ask him to do? Or how are you going to sort it out? So we do this all the time here. I'm not sure what you guys do. But if you're doing an amputation for somebody, what would you do? You would take him to someone who's already had a similar implant. You would introduce him to the person and show him this is what you're going to get and this is how you're going to use it. Okay, it's a lot better that way than you bringing him doing an amputation. He has no idea, no clue what you're doing. And then finally, your physios need to train these people how to wear them and how to use them. Okay, everybody's clear so far? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So let's go to lower limb. Okay, and the first thing that comes in lower limb is the shoes. Okay, so shoes is an orthosis if you put any additional implant into it. Okay, so basically most shoes are leather based, and you have a shoe which allows an orthosis, and you have a shoe which does not allow an orthosis. So a blucher shoes is which does not allow orthosis. Sorry, which allows orthosis, and balmoral shoes are which don't allow you orthosis. So if you look at it, this is a blucher shoe, which is what we normally wear. This will allow you to put an orthosis into it. These shoes that have got laces going up to the ankle will not be able to allow orthosis for you to use. So if you are going to do a shoe orthosis, you need to know what type of shoe you have, or you can tell the patient what type of shoe to bring with, so you can add an orthosis onto it. Okay. So in the foot, if you're looking at an orthosis with the foot, you have to put one. Just give me a second. There's somebody who rang the bells. I'm sorry, it's very disruptive today. Just give me a second. Not now. Okay, so in a shoe, you need to have an orthosis that can go inside the shoe, and I'll tell you what it means by inserting a pad into the shoe here. You can have a plastic or a soft one. You can have one which is hard, especially like a metatarsal bar. You can have an orthosis in the shoe that is in a cushion, or you can have a orthosis that helps you with heel spurs. So there are different type of orthoses in the shoe, like, okay? So if you look at it, this is a jelly type orthosis. These are for heel pads and people who have calcaneal spurs, or people who have plantar fasciitis. These are the ones that put a heel onto it, okay? Okay, then you have people who have flat feet. You can have an arch support in the shoe, put in the shoe. It's a small little thing that you can get off the shelf, and basically it is shaped to allow you to have a change in your longitudinal arch. Okay, but they're orthoses, they're just pads, but at the end of the day, they make your life so easy by putting something like that, simple as that, into a shoe. Okay, and by shaping the orthoses, you can put into varus and valgus depending on where the flatness is and what's working and what's not working for you. Okay, and this is what it looks like. These are all orthoses, and they are for forefoot positioning, and one of the contraindications for these is if you have got a Charcot's foot or a diabetic foot and it's insensate, then you shouldn't be putting in these orthoses because they put a lot of pressure and you can end up with ulcers. So one of the contraindications of in-shoe orthosis is an insensate foot or a diabetic foot or a Charcot foot. Okay, so the next thing, so we talked about heel problem, then we talk about heel lifts. So where's the commonest thing that we use heel lifts in our lives, or in the patient that you will see? Where would you see a heel lift used? It's a very boring and difficult subject. Unfortunately, you need to know enough to pass the exam. So I will just I won't make it difficult for you. I'll just give you bits and bobs, yeah?
Limb length discrepancy?
Well, you wouldn't put the heel and you will take the whole shoe up, isn't it? So you're trying to extend the foot. Where would you want to extend the forefoot?
Yeah, by the sole.
So you will do it when you want to relax the hamstrings or the Achilles tendon. This is a common implant given to people who have Achilles tendon injuries that are managed non-operatively. And at 4 weeks, once all the plaster is taken out, you can actually give these insole roos on both sides. So then the person walks with his heel off the ground, which means he's not putting a lot of pressure on his tendon, therefore they're pain-free. The commonest use that we see in sports injuries is hamstring injuries, not hamstring, gastrocnemius injuries. So people who come with a gastrocnemius tear, it's a red muscle tear and you can't repair it. And what you do is the management for those is bilateral heel lifts. Okay? Yeah. So what's a rocker bottom shoe or a rocker bottom foot? Does anybody know what a rocker bottom shoe is? Have you seen any orthotics in your practice?
No, sir.
This is one of the commonest orthoses.
Tradition they use of orthotics much.
So in diabetic people who have got insensate skin, when you want them to walk and weight bear, you want them to distribute the whole weight across the skin rather than one particular area. So rocker bottom shoes is a total contact plaster, which allows you to walk without actually putting pressure on any part of your skin. And the second function is because it's got a rocker bottom, i.e. like a swing, when you walk on it, it will allow you to do a push-up when you get off the floor without actually using any effort. So if you look at it, this is a rocker bottom shoe. Can you see that? Can you see that, guys? So it's not flat, but it's got a curve on it.
Right now.
So when you put weight on it, it will push you off. Okay. And also, this is a total contact or a rocker bottom sole for plaster people or people who have had problems with insensate skin, such as Charcot's problems or diabetics or other. If you put this, then because it's grabbing, catching everything, and it's allowing you to walk, there's not a lot of pressure on the skin, and therefore you're able to walk on it. Okay, so clear. So we have a shoe raise, we have a heel, we have a heel raise, and then we have a rocker bottom foot, a rocker bottom plaster or rocker bottom shoe. Okay, we're going to come top to the hip also, but gradually. Okay, so do you understand? We have insoles that allow you to change varus and valgus. You have leg length discrepancy, therefore you can build a shoe on it. You have heels into your shoe to allow you to take the pressure off the calcaneum, and then you have heel raises where it allows you to get the gastrocnemius muscle and the Achilles tendon to be able to work without actually stretching it. Okay, so far. Do you think it's a dull and boring topic? Unfortunately, most of orthopedics is very exciting. This is the bit that we don't see or do. But in our part of the world here in England, this is the most important thing because a patient does not need an operation. You can fix them with orthotics. Everything does not need an operation. Okay.
Actually, sir, the slides are coming quite slow than the narration from your side.
Yeah, because I'm not moving the slides.
Yeah.
I'm not moving the slides. I'm talking so that you can understand. There's no point in looking at slides if you don't understand what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing is AFO, which is the second common thing. You have a shoe with everything inside the shoe, such as making the length right or putting a heel into it or making it total contact. Now you move on from the shoe to the ankle foot orthosis. It's called an AFO. Okay, it can be put in a shoe. You can make a special one without the shoe, or you can add it onto one of your orthoses that goes up above the knee also. Okay, so it is molded. It has got various things to do, and you have something that you can put in a shoe, or you can make it into a solid attachment to the shoe. Why would you want to have an ankle foot orthosis? Therefore, what is the indication?
Like in a foot drop patient to maintain the position of the foot.
Okay. Where else? So what about this one and what about this one? What's the difference between the two? This is solid and this is allowing you to do various things. What's the difference? So if you have arthritis and joint pain, you want to have a solid orthosis so that the joint does not move. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. If you have a foot drop, then you want a springy or a flexible one, which allows you to push off so you can walk on it. Easy?
Yes. Yes.
But you knew all this. It's just that you're not thinking out of the box. If you want to stop motion, what do you do it for? You do it for arthritis, isn't it? If you want to help motion, you do it when something is not working. So solid one is for arthritis. The flexible one is if you want to do it for a foot drop or you want to replicate or duplicate some muscle that is not working. Okay?
Yes.
So again, we have free motion and limited controls in the ankle. So you have an ankle foot orthosis, which actually has, what is this part of the orthosis called? This bit here or this bit here? What is this called?
We cannot see it. I cannot. I don't know about the other people.
So can anybody see the slides?
Right now, I can see ankle foot orthosis slide.
Yeah, which says free motion and limited motion.
And no, just the.
Yeah, well, then your internet is very slow because I have moved my slide, and if it's not working, then your internet must be slow. Do you want to go in, come back again, and see what happens?
I'll try that.
Can everybody see this new slide then? Hello? Everybody's gone quiet. So I can't teach if you guys don't interact. It is not for me to spoon feed you. You have to interact and be interactive with me. And I'm not going to spoon feed. This is not my, intention to teach.
Yes, sir. I can see both the pictures.
So then it's nothing wrong with my computer. Apparently the internet must be slow on your side, then, isn't it? So it's not going to work, guys, if you're not going to be interactive and not going to be, I'm not doing lectures. This is not Pakistan where you just stick and listen, take a book and copy. If you're
I'm
not going to be
actually in
interactive, we can't
UAE.
do this. Because, I mean, there's nothing in it for me. I only teach because I want you guys to learn. But if you're just going to sit there and watch me and talk with me, then that's not going to work. I'd like some
Definitely,
feedback.
definitely.
I want you to be
That's
interactive.
not the, yeah, now we can see some
Sir, sir, I can
ankle
see
control,
the
free
pictures.
motion, limited.
Okay, so what is this part of the orthosis called? I've just told you in the first slide that I showed you. So what is this part of the ankle orthosis called?
Where can you point?
The strap.
Sorry, what?
Can you point again the pointer?
So this black bit,
Straps.
can you see this black bit?
Yes, sir.
So what is this called?
So leg control.
No, I told you they have things. Everything has got a joint, has got a shank, it's got a receptacle, and it also has stirrups. So this is the shank part of the orthosis. Everything that's not in a joint but is able to hold the leg, that's a shank. This is the suspension mechanism, the straps on here to allow it to hold you to this does not, and the bit that the leg is going into is called the suction up it, like, okay. So this is basics of every implant that you're going to see orthosis, that you have to know what is the joint, what type of joint it is it rigid or is it flexible? You have to know that this is the body is called the shank, then there has stirrups, which is called the attachments, and then you have to have a suction bit where the leg or the plant goes into it. So it's an ankle foot orthosis. This one is of free motion. This one is of limited motion. That one is for arthritis. This one is to replicate or help you push off, kick off so that you can walk. Okay, so this is another example of solid ankle foot orthosis. This is an old system, but if you can look at it, there's the joint. This is the shank. That is the suspension mechanism, and that's the suction mechanism into it. They all have the same basics, components. It's just they get modified into where you want to use them. But for you, if you get stuck with an implant, you must tell them what joint it covers. So if it covers the ankle and foot, so it's an ankle foot orthosis. It's a flexible or a rigid orthosis, and you must tell them that this is the body or shank of it. This is the suspension mechanism, the stirrups that we're using it, and this is the suction mechanism where the foot or the whatever leg is going into it. Every implant has the same common denomination. Okay, so you must know these before you move on to any bit of exam. You need to know that everything is the same. It's very simple, very straightforward. Okay, so let's see. Once you've had an ankle foot orthosis, you can have some stirrups on it, i.e. the suspension mechanism, which allows you to correct varus or valgus problems. Okay, so again, it is basically a spring mechanism that allows you to collect, and you use the convention type where you have, this one longer or shorter to allow it into going into varus or valgus. Do you understand that? Or you can have a molded one by strength where you want and leave it open so the person can put this in the shoe and wear it. Okay. Again, this is an ankle foot orthosis. This is the shank of it. This is the suspension mechanism, and this bit that things are going into it is the suction. Can you all see this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand what I'm telling you? Everything is common. You need to know this is an ankle foot orthosis. This has got the ankle bit of it. This is the shank part of it, or a body. This is the suspension mechanism, and this is where the suction bit is, where your foot will go into it. Exactly the same. If you look at it, it says ankle foot orthosis. This is the suspension mechanism, and this is where everything is going into it. So everything is exactly the same basic principle. Okay, so then you have specialized AFOs that do different things. For example, if you've done surgery to protect them, if you have no leg at all and you want to attach it to the knee, or you have patella tendon bearing to take the weight off. These are different type of AFOs, but they are still AFOs. This has got the foot ankle orthosis. This is the shank. This is the suspension mechanism, and this is the suction part of it. So I'm going to repeat this every time so you understand that all the orthotics are exactly the same, only the shape differences, but they have a joint. So if you had an orthosis that goes up to the hip, then you have a foot and ankle part of it, you have a knee part of it, you have a body, a shank, the suspension mechanism, and a stirrup, which is holding it together, and then a suction mechanism through which the lift goes. Okay, exactly the same in everything. It's just the shape changes. There are different needs. We realize the shoe is, you can give them length, You can lift the heel off, or you can make it to go into valgus and varus. Remember, when we use it for flat feet, you're allowing it because it's flexible, and you can help it by giving an orthosis, and they have no pain and they walk better. So if somebody comes to the clinic, how would you know this person has flat feet or this person is going into valgus and varus when they walk? How do you know? So if you have a short case and they tell you to find out whether this person has got flat feet or not, how would you do by looking at the person? What would you do? What are the tests that help you? Sorry? Nobody wants to be part of this, isn't it? Yeah. It's getting very difficult for me if you're not going to be participating. I mean, I'm not the old-fashioned person that will give you a lecture and all of you will write. You have to participate. So if you have a short case in the exam, and your examiner asks you, how do you know this person has got flat feet? What would you do? What will you look at?
Sir, first we will see either it is a flexible or a rigid flat fit.
So that's even later. Now, even by just looking at his shoes, how would you know he's got flat feet or not?
Sir, with flat feet, there will be more wear of the shoe on the medial aspect.
Yes, you know this, isn't it? So you will look at the shoe. So in the exam, if you have an adult who comes in with a foot and ankle problem, the first thing you do is you pick the shoe up and look at the sole of the shoe and see where it's worn out. Okay, that's very common. How else would you know that this person has got flat feet or valgus varus feet? Okay, so you look at the wear. What's the other thing you can do as a test?
Sir, we can do the Coleman block test.
That's to allow you to know whether it's flexible or not, isn't it? How can you know this person has flat feet if the person is wearing rubber chappals and he's got brand new shoes? How can you say that he's got flat feet?
Sir, we have to ask him to remove his shoe, and on full weight bearing, we will see the arches of the foot.
So that's a clinical test, but what's the normal test that you do for these guys? What you will do is it's called the impact test. And you will ask the person to step on these pads, which has got ink on it. And then you will ask him to stand on a piece of paper, right? If all the foot and the toes are on the paper, he's got flat feet. If only a curve is there, then it's normal. If there is nothing at all except the heel and the toes, then he's got a cavus foot. Do you guys not do this test? I mean,
No,
most
sir,
of my trainees that come for the exam, they're supposed to know this test if you have a foot and ankle case.
Sir, we just do the Coleman block test to know.
That does not make you an orthopedic surgeon. That makes you somebody who memorized like a parrot one test and go and say that. So how would you know he's got flat test? Very simple. You look at the shoe first, okay? Whether he's got cavus feet or whether he's got a flat foot. And if he's got a brand new pair of shoes, then what you do is you do what is called the ink pad test. You ask them to weight bear on a piece of paper after they've stained their feet. You will know whether he's got a cavus foot or a planus foot. Okay, clinically, it is called too many toes sign. Do you understand what that means?
Yes, sir. When we see the patient from the back in a valgus, in a planovalgus feet, there will be forefoot abduction and too many toes signs.
Very good.
Will be there.
So now you do the Coleman block test whether you want to know whether this is flexible or rigid, isn't it? Is that correct?
Yes, sir, right.
So once you can't go to K2 mountain straight away. You have to prepare, you have to condition yourself, you have to then do the trial run, then you have to make sure that everything's prepared before you climb the mountain. So if you're going to see a foot and ankle person, you have to look at the person's shoes, footwear, then you have to know what it says and what you're looking for. You can't just do Coleman block test every time you see somebody with a foot and ankle problem, isn't it? Well, that's what I think anyway, but whatever your teachers tell you, okay?
Okay.
Then the next stage is we've done shoe, we have done ankle foot orthosis. What is the next orthosis that will come in this line then?
KFO.
So then knee ankle foot orthosis, okay? So basically, it is exactly as the ankle foot orthosis, but now you've added the knee part of it. And in the knee, you can have a hinge joint which locks or which is flexible, okay? And there are various ways of locking this knee joint. You can have a free motion. You can lock it by a drop lock. You can drop it by tightening the screw, or there must be a block for it to allow you to do that. Okay, so you now have an knee ankle foot orthosis, which has got an ankle joint and knee joint involved. It also has a rigid or a flexible ankle. It has got a rigid or flexible or lockable knee. It has got a shank in the body. It has got a suspension mechanism, and it's got a suction mechanism. You with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes? So it's beginning a pattern now, isn't it? It's a pattern now, so it can't be that difficult if you get into a pattern. Okay? It is not difficult, it's just boring. That's all it is. Okay? So now this is a knee, ankle, foot orthosis. Okay? So can you see it?
Yes, sir.
So it has got a rigid ankle joint. It has got a flexible knee joint. It's got a shank. It's got a suspension mechanism. And it's got a receptacle or a suction mechanism. Agreed?
Agreed, sir.
Yes, easy, isn't it? Now once you know what to look for. Okay, it's the same one as here. It's a different implant, but here the ankle is flexible. The knee is flexible. You have a suspension mechanism. You have a shank. And you have a receptacle. Okay? Okay?
Right, sir.
So there are various ways of doing this. You don't need to get complicated. So what is this implant called? The one with the blue. Can you see the child with the blue?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what is that? And where do you use it?
Sir, I have never seen this before.
So the person is using his hands, isn't it? Yeah, so his hands are working, right? But his legs are not working. What condition do you know where the legs motor function is absent? Is what, sorry? You can have paraplegic, but more often than not, what else will give you something like that?
No, I said diplegic, sir.
Diplegic. Okay, so in cerebral palsy. In cerebral palsy, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the other condition that you know that has a motor function or a sensory function missing?
Shorted my tooth?
Yes, it's a very special condition, but this is an orthosis which is called a total body contact orthosis. Again, if you're going to be describing this, it has got... Sorry guys, you know, if you're teaching and learning, you can't have distractions. You either put your voice down, or if you're joining me, you have to understand what we're talking about, not just talk in the background. This is totally disrespectful to me, like, yeah? So it has got a foot ankle part, but it's rigid. Can you see that? The knee is also rigid. The only movement it has is the hip. So you have a foot, an ankle, you have a knee, and you have a hip part of this joint, okay? You have a rigid knee, a rigid ankle, but a flexible or a movable hip. This is the body or shank of it. This is the stirrup which holds it together, and this is the receptacle where the legs is going into. It's a totally different implant, but exactly the same basic principle, okay? You have a joint, you have a shank for a body, you have a suspension mechanism, and you have a strapping mechanism to allow everything together. Happy with that so far? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then you have specialized knee orthosis, which allows you to have motion. And these are very specific.
Yes, sir, I am happy.
Yeah, what, sorry? I can't hear you guys anyway. So you have special knee orthosis, especially if you are doing a surgical procedure. These are to splint the knee, but allow movement so that you don't get a stiff knee. So especially if you're doing an ACL repair, you need one of these implants, okay? So these are special implants, and you know that it's got no ankle involved in it, so what will it be called? So we had a shoe, we had an ankle foot orthosis and a knee ankle foot orthosis. What is this called now?
Knee orthosis.
Exactly, okay? It's not difficult, you just have to describe what you see. So this is a knee orthosis, and the knee orthosis has got various types. You can have soft tissue type, you have types which support your muscles, and you have types which allow you to move, And there are types which allow the patella to be part of it, and there are types which allow the patella not to be part of it. I won't go into the details of it, but now you get the hang of it. Everything will be exactly the same. You will find out soon, yeah? Okay? So again, there are different types of it, and if you have surge on the patella, then you have a patella stabilizing implant which allows flexion, but it allows the patella to be stabilized. So, to look at the blue bit of the implant picture. Can you see all the blue picture?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so first of all, if I show you this, I'll ask you, what is this? What are you going to tell me?
Sorry, sir.
If I show you this picture on the screen in the exam, I ask you, what is this? What are you going to tell me?
Knee brace.
No.
Sir, knee orthosis.
Very good.
With,
So it's a knee
patella
orthosis. Okay, it's a knee orthosis because the patella stabilizes the knee orthosis with the patella stabilizing part. Okay, so now if I ask you to describe the orthosis, what are you going to tell me? Every implant will have a joint. So this joint here is the knee, right? Every implant will have a body or a shank. This is the body or shank of the implant orthosis, yeah? Every implant or orthosis will have a suspension mechanism, which is this strap. This is suspending it to the body. And every implant will have a suction mechanism through which the part of the body goes. So is it any different from any other orthosis you've seen? Exactly the same. Okay, you just have to describe what it is, what is it doing, and then you describe all the parts of it. If you do that, nobody's going to fail you in the exam because you know more than the examiner does. Are we happy so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes. You need to describe what it is, what joint it's covering. So if it is covering the ankle, it's an ankle-foot orthosis. If it is covering a knee with the ankle, it becomes knee, ankle, foot orthosis. If it covers the hip with it, it becomes hip, knee, ankle, foot orthosis. Okay? If it only covers the knee, it becomes a knee orthosis, right? Every orthosis will have a shank or a body. Every orthosis will have a suspension mechanism, and every orthosis will have a suction mechanism. We clear about this so far?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so sometimes you have the tubinets or stockinets that people wear. Do you understand when people wear stockinets? Yeah, what is the function of these?
Yes, sir. And that is
Is what, sorry?
it's
It works as a compression mechanism, right? It allows, if you have incompetent veins, for the blood to go back but not come back again. So you wear these if you feel that you were going to have DVT or P or something like that, isn't it? Secondly, it's got a proprioceptive function. It touches the skin, so therefore skin knows where it is and will function accordingly. Thirdly, it will retain heat. And by doing that, it may increase local circulation, therefore the healing may be quicker. You can have good healing from it, okay? So these are types which are used around the legs, elbows, and wrists, okay? So these are specialized knee orthoses here, but they can call them a specialized wrist or a specialized elbow or a specialized, thigh orthosis. But wherever it is functioning, whatever joint it's working at, you need to name that and then describe it. So then from shoes to foot and ankle to foot and ankle and knee, now we come to hip, knee, ankle, foot orthosis, okay? And this is one of those. So if somebody asks you what this was, you will tell them that this is a hip, knee, ankle orthosis, okay? It's got a hip joint which is flexible, it's got a knee joint which is flexible, and it's got an ankle joint which is flexible. It's got a pelvic attachment, it's got a suspension mechanism with all these stirrups going around it, and it's got a suction mechanism where the legs is going through it. Okay, same description. It's just that you modify whichever joint is involved in it. So knee, hip, ankle, foot orthosis. Okay. So what about this one?
It's a trunk involving or trunk and
So you can say that this is a trunk, hip, knee, ankle, foot orthosis. Okay.
yes, sir.
Happy? Agreed? So it's got a...
Agreed, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's got a... Where's my pointer on? Yeah, trunk, hip, knee, ankle orthosis. What type of orthosis is on the ankle? Is it a rigid or is it a flexible? It's a rigid orthosis, isn't it? Yeah, as the knee's got some flexion in, the hip's got some flexion. So basically, this is for somebody who has got no power in his lower limb, but has got function around the top of it. So the reason that this has been given to that person is to mobilize, because nobody likes to lie in bed all the time or go in a wheelchair. This makes them independent. It looks awkward, but if you wear clothes on top of it, it might not be that bad. Okay, so what's a Dennis Brown splint?
Dennis Brown splint is for the congenital talipes equinovarus, and
Yeah.
after pulsating task, we apply it for to maintain the position of the foot.
So first of all, is what type of orthosis will you call this? It's an ankle foot orthosis, isn't it? Yes? Yes. It's got a suspension mechanism, which are the laces. It's got a suction mechanism, and this is all the body and shank of it. Okay? So what principle does this work on? And even this, you know, when you have a plaster or one of these special harnesses, the Palvnik type, you put on children, what principles do they use to work to make correction? So your mic is not working, Mohammed. Can anybody else tell me what principle is being used here?
Make the feet in vertical position up to 70 degree.
Yes, but what function is being used? Well, basics. We're talking about basics now. Orthosis will be on the basics table. So what function is being used here? So do you remember we said creep? Do you know when we said creep? So the creep is being used here. When you put sustained pressure on something, it will give. That's called creep. Do you remember your first couple that you use? When you draw that graph curve there, do you remember looking at creep and all that kind of stuff? There's a reason for you to understand that. It's not just to make the graphs. You need to understand where it works. The creep is working here. You're putting sustained pressure on this, and it will take the shape eventually and give way. Okay. So we've done the spinal trunk orthosis. Okay. We've done the neck soft collars and hard collar. We have done cervical orthosis. They're all the same. Whatever joint it's covering, you have to name it. It has got a suspension mechanism. This is a suspension mechanism. This is the body and shank of it, and this is the suction mechanism where the head's going into it. Like, okay, everything is exactly the same. We just need to know which joint it's covering, and remember the three parts. Remember the three parts. First of all is the shank, then the suspension, and then the suction mechanism. These three things, if you remember, you can describe any orthosis you see in life. Yeah. Okay, so we don't want to talk about that. Just to same as in the hand. This is now a wrist orthosis. Yeah, and it is a rigid orthosis. It's got a body and shank. It's got a suspension mechanism by going around the body, and it's got a suction mechanism with the hands going through it. Exactly the same here. There's no difference. Where's the common place you would use one of these implants? An aeroplane splint. I can't hear you. Something is wrong with your guys' speakers, or is it whatever it is? It's all broken now. What? So this is used in a posterior dislocation of the shoulder. Okay. So if you are anteriorly dislocated, when you reduce it, you need to internally rotate it and abduct it. Adduct it, the boil will be in the socket. If you're a posterior dislocation, then to bring the ball back in the socket, you have to abduct and externally rotate. This is why an aeroplane splint is used for people who have had surgery at the back of their glenohumeral joint, or they are posterior dislocators. Okay, that's what an aeroplane splint will be used for.
Okay.
So then you have dynamic devices. Devices which have spring mechanism. This is the hand wrist device, but it has got a dynamic mechanism where it allows you to actively move, and then the spring brings it back into position. Okay, so these are dynamic, and then this is a motor driven one where a motor will do it for you. Okay, so to end this all, we need to understand is that it's not just humans that have orthosis, but animals also have orthosis. This dolphin is a famous dolphin in America, and it lost its fin, so they created a fin for it to swim. Similarly, this is a Malaysian elephant who had an amputation because of infection. They made a leg for him, and you can see they did it for the dog. So if you are going to look at this. What would you call this? Can you describe this? Come on, guys, I'm not asking you difficult things. This is a knee, this is an ankle, so it's a knee, ankle, foot orthosis. Yes?
Right, sir.
Yeah, and this is the suspension mechanism with the stirrups, and this is the suction mechanism. It's no different than what you've seen all day. No different. Exactly the same principle in every orthosis. You just have to describe the joint and the parts of it, and that's it. Okay? Would you be able to do this in the exam?
Inshallah, sir.
Do you think you're better in orthosis now than what you started about half an hour ago?
Sir, it has improved a lot.
Quite a lot. You guys don't interact with me, and I get very upset if you don't interact with me, okay? So the future, this is what the future is going to be. You will have we are using this for our athletes here in England. This is a memory controlled, they've got biomechanical chips implanted in their bodies, and you can allow the neurotransmitters and the muscles and the nerves to actually make you function. But this is a long time from here now. But we are having these implants trialed in most countries here, but it will come to Pakistan inshallah soon. Okay, so question time. Now you guys can ask me questions. Nobody wants to ask questions. I don't understand. I think your internet is bad, all of you guys. I can't hear any of you guys. No questions. So nobody wants to ask questions, yeah? Or your system's not working. Well, why don't you put it in the chat? You know, there's a chat underneath it. Why don't you write whatever question you want to ask and I'll see if I can read it and try it for you. Can you do that? Because I can't hear any of you. Yes, no. Shall I close and come back again to make sure that your computers can be better, or what do you want me to do? Okay, so myoelectric prosthesis, that's the future. This is a question from Mohammed Rafat, right? So what happens is that the chips are in or around the muscle or a body of the muscle, okay? And when you move a muscle, it creates an impulse, and that impulse then moves the artificial implant that you have. I think I have a picture of it somewhere. Just give me a second and I'll show it to you. Well, it does not allow me to minimize, okay? Let me stop the recording.